Hey YouTube, it's Cash. So today we're recording drums with non-microphone microphones. So I'm going to be recording drums all with devices that their primary function or purpose wasn't for just audio recording, at least not in this way. This is part 2 of a 3-part series, and the next part will be a big reveal, so stay tuned for that. The previous part, if you haven't seen it, check that out. I make some big sounds with some small speakers, and this is all kind of leading up to this reveal, which is going to be a track that I'm working on. The reason why that I'm using some unusual techniques is because I'm trying to lay a foundation to create a lot of different frequencies or unusual elements, to create some scenes and different things I can cherry pick from later, because there's a lot going on in this track that you're not hearing yet. And with it being as busy as it is, I want to be able to kind of find niches where I can kind of put things. And by doing that, or laying the foundation for that, I can have many elements to pick from. And I might want to create some different scenes within the track to make it seem like I'm maybe even playing like a completely different drum set, for example, for a section or something like that. So that's what this is all about. The first section or group of microphones I want to talk about are sound meters. They're made really high quality, and both of the ones that I have that I'm using in this video are made by General Radio. They're made for noise detection. And the first one here is a 1565A sound meter, and it has a battery inside. It's just I think a C battery, yeah. And it's like a solid state device. It has got a filter built in, which you can use for like various unique recording techniques if you want. I leave both of these sound meters wide open to try and get the most real sound I can get. This has like a little bit of a threaded thing here. I was able to use that for a camera tripod to kind of get it on a stand, because it's kind of bulky to kind of put on a regular mic stand, but that works fine for this video. Now I picked this up for probably like $50 with shipping. Like I found this catalog with the price information and that sort of thing for 1968. In today's money, this would have been $2,000. So I just appreciate the quality and workmanship that went into building these things. And it comes with a nice leather case. So the big brother to this guy is the 1551C sound level meter. Yes, there it is. Oh. This is a tube, or it has a tube preamp in it. This is used as a battery that you can't find anymore. I had to make one. You can make your own. By the way, you can make your own battery out of other batteries. I'll put a link down below for the site that I used, where you can actually print like a box so that you can kind of glue it together or tape it together, so that as long as you fit your batteries in that box, it'll fit in the same space as the battery that would have originally went into this. And so I made mine out of like some 9 volts and that sort of thing. I'll do a video later, probably on just the sleeper microphones and stuff like that, that kind of go into this stuff in more detail. But so I'm just kind of doing a brief overview of these right now. Turn this on. That's the on switch. The thing that makes this a little bit easier to use the mic is that this just pops off here, and you can use regular XLR cable in here. Just make sure that if you're using anything like this, you have to use high quality XLR cables. If they're not shielded properly, they'll make noise. So that's the other thing there. This also has a filter built into it as well, if you want to use that sort of thing. The cost of this in today's figures would have been over $4,000 for one of these. And I actually paid less for this than I did for the smaller one. But if you find them, even if it says that they're working, you can't find parts for these tubes. I don't know where to find them, so I got lucky. And I have a parts one that I have too. So if anything goes south, I can try and figure it out that way. But yeah, it's kind of hard to work with this stuff, because they don't make anything any way to fix them anymore. And the capacitors are old and they're wax, and they could go at any time. So the next group of microphones I want to talk about, or non-microphone microphones, are these tape recorders that I used. This is a technique that I learned from Sylvia Massy, where you basically, there's a lot of compressors built into these things because they're made to record like interviews and stuff like that, and to get all the sound, no matter where they are in the room, it kind of picks up a lot of stuff. So you can actually get a unique and a very cool signal out of one of these. And the way you do that simply is you just hit record, you put a tape inside. You're not actually recording on the tape. You hit record and then you hit pause, and it activates the microphone, and then you just take the headphone or earphone jack out, and you get a signal that way. The one thing that she doesn't talk about, which is that even if you hit pause on one of these things, the motor runs, and with it having those compressors inside, it'll pick up that sound. So one thing that I did, I always modify my recorders for like lo-fi purposes, tape loops, things of that nature. So I put a stutter switch in here since I was going into it anyway, and I put a motor speed control, and basically, you hear that? There you go. You can turn the motor off. And the other thing that I did is that I put in just kind of a whole picture frame, and I put these stands in here. The one thing that she doesn't talk about either is that if she suggests to kind of put it on a table or something and just kind of get it into like the drum area kind of close to kind of get a signal. But the one thing is that there's a lot of things to account for. Your room, the sound bouncing off the ceiling. I mean, this microphone's aiming straight up. And you're going to get more cymbal sound that way, which is fine, but I didn't want that, and at least I want to have the option to have it or not have it. So I put this stand in here, so I can put these actually on the floor, and it actually puts it at a really good angle to kind of capture whatever I want. And I have two of these, so I have one kind of like closer to the snare and one actually like, closer to the kick drum, and that's how I mic with these. The third thing I have is this. I got this from, and I'll put a link to his Instagram, maybe in his YouTube. Is this guy who he's great with modifying things and working with lo-fi effects and different sounds of that nature. And one thing he does is he makes these microphones out of telephone receivers, and his name is Brian Mahoney. He goes by Uhlectronic, and he makes some great stuff, and then he sells a lot of his stuff. So check that out. And I saw this, and I can modify a phone myself, but you can't find. It's hard to find something like this. It's from 1940. The unique thing about this receiver is that it actually powers itself by the vibration that goes into the receiver. So it has a really unique lo-fi sound. The one thing I use microphones for, or various microphones, is sometimes to kind of like, it's not so much about everything a microphone can capture, sometimes it's about what the microphone doesn't capture. And in this case, it selects, it only captures like some unique frequencies, and so in that way it makes a really good mic or snare mic for, like, if you're micing the underside of a snare, and that's what I'm using it for in this video. It kind of like eliminates a lot of the other frequencies coming from the drums. So the good thing about that is I can put it far enough away from the snare so it's still in phase, which I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I'm not really capturing a lot of the other drum set. So that's kind of the plus there with this. So kind of a cool thing. I had to have it. He put it on his site, so I bought it from him, and it's coming in pretty handy. You also do some cool lo-fi recording, with your vocals or whatever else with this, which is pretty cool. Well, I just wanted to talk about the drum kit. I'm using like this Frankenstein kit where I have like full drum sets, but the reason why I'm using this one is it has the extra large toms. The kick drum is my dead kick drum that I have, which has the driest sound, so that's why I'm using it today. As I mentioned, there's a lot more going on in this audio wise with this track, and I don't need a big booming kick for this. The original kick drum that goes with the set is actually like a 24-inch. This is a 22, and it's not muffled at all. So I didn't want to use that one. And so that's kind of like what the thought process is behind this setup. You want to make sure, like when you're doing the recording, that you really think about, as far as drum set wise, various pieces. You don't have to necessarily use a complete set. You can kind of mix and match things depending on the sounds that you want to capture, and that's what I did. So one thing I should mention is that, and I didn't discover this until after I was done recording, which happens sometimes. And in a lot of cases, I would go back and do it again. I'm just concerned with myself, and again, I'm just trying to get some unique sounds anyway, so I'm not overly concerned with so much else going on in the song that you're not hearing yet. I wasn't really worried about it, and I can actually work with it and actually create some interesting sounds by using this. But the one thing I found out, unfortunately, was a bolt broke off inside my snare as I was recording, and I didn't hear it. But the unique thing about these microphones, since they're such high quality and they're noise detection microphones, is that they picked it up. So you can kind of, if you hear that in these samples, just keep that in mind. It's unfortunately it's there, but it's part of the recording process sometimes. And sometimes something like that happens, you can actually use it in a unique way, and that's what I'm going to do. If there's any kind of like hum or buzz, sometimes I'll pitch it. In my DAW to actually be in pitch with the song, and then maybe put some distortion or some effects on it, so it actually sounds almost like its own instrument. So I may do that, in the end or in the final mix. We're going to talk about phase a little bit, and I'm going to just play you some samples of these things. With phase, what happens is you have sound waves coming from your whatever you're recording, and it's important if you're using multiple microphones, which you do with my drums often, that they're in phase. Which you can simply do that by making sure you measure the distance from the microphone to whatever you're recording. With drums, primarily you want to pay attention to the snare. With overheads, I tend to pay attention to the snare and the kick drum. So, and with the overheads here, I use this General Radio tube microphone, and I measured it equal distance from the kick drum and the snare, and here's a sample of that. Now with these General Radio microphones that I use, these sound meters, this one I wasn't so concerned. I use them for the toms, so I wasn't so concerned with the phase as much. But I did try and keep it sort of equidistant from the snare as well, as best as I could. But it's not perfect, but it's close enough. So here's a sample of what this sounds like. With these tape recorders, I definitely have made sure that they were in phase with the snare. Primarily, one is closer to the kick and one is closer to the snare, so I can play with those in the mix. And here's a sample of that. This one I already mentioned. I mic'd the aiming at the underside of the snare, so it's the chain on the bottom, and I kept that in phase with the overheads and the tape recorders on the floor. And here's a sample of that. So here's the track as it stands now. Now, next episode, it's going to be a surprise. There's going to be some interesting things going on there. You're going to actually hear me. You're going to hear me sing. So that's going to be. You're going to stay tuned for that. But keep in mind there's a lot going on that you aren't hearing. The arrangement. I've kind of done some things on purpose to kind of throw you off a little bit, so there's actually even sections of the song that you're not even hearing. So this will be a sample of kind of like what the whole drum set sounds like. I'm going to be playing over what I played in the previous episode, so you can kind of hear everything as it is right now. So check it out.